Assalamualaikum. I hope everyone in a very good condition right now. So today we are going to continue the new subtopic 7.3 Fermentation. So without wasting our time, let's continue. So we are going to discussing about the fermentation. So what is fermentation? Fermentation is the incomplete breakdowns of glucose when the conditions of limited oxygen or without oxygen. The difference between fermentation and aerobic respiration is, in fermentation, after the glycolysis, the pyruvate will undergo either alcohol fermentation or lactic acid fermentation. So today we are going to discuss the alcohol fermentation in yeast and plant and lactic acid fermentation in Lactobacillus and human muscle cells. Now we are going to discuss the alcohol fermentation. So the definitions is the alcohol fermentation is incomplete breakdowns of glucose to form ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. So during this time, the energy that produced is only about 210 kilojoules. Now we will discuss about the alcohol fermentation in yeast. Ethanol is used in the making of beers and wine. In the diagram, you can see that what makes the bread dough rise is the carbon dioxide has been released and trapped in the dough. Meanwhile, the alcohol fermentation in plants, we are discussing about the paddy plant. Paddy plants grow in the waterlogged area, which is the area is a lack of oxygen and able to carry out alcohol fermentation. Ethanol that produced in the tissues during the fermentation is toxic to most plants, but paddy plants have a higher tolerance for ethanol compared to the other species. So what makes the paddy plant so special? This is because the paddy plant can produce plenty of alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme that this enzyme can break down the ethanol into the non-toxic carbon dioxide. Next, we are discussing about the lactic acid fermentation. It is involved the incomplete breakdowns of glucose into lactic acid and energy. So we are discussed in the lactic acid fermentation in Lactobacillus, and second one is the human muscle cells during the vigorous training. So in the production of the yogurt, the bacteria of Lactobacillus will be used to carry out the milk fermentation. So this bacteria will act on the lactose, turns it into the lactic acid. Lactic acid that the sources of the sour taste in the yogurt. The lactic acid then will coagulate the Kssm to produce yogurt. Next, we discuss about the human muscle cells during the vigorous training or in the heavy activities. During the activities, the rate of oxygen use exceeds the oxygen supply. So what happened to the muscle is the muscle in the condition which is a lack of oxygen, and it is said to undergo oxygen debt. Hence, the glucose cannot break down completely. For each glucose that broken down only produce 2 ATP molecules. Then the produce of lactic acid also accumulates in the muscles that can cause fatigue and muscle cramp. This will occur when the lactic acid accumulation reach a certain level of concentration. But when the vigorous activity stops, the intake of excess oxygen will oxidize the lactic acid back into carbon dioxide, water and energy. So when the lactic acid has been expelled, the oxygen debt is repeated. This figure is about the alcohol fermentation in human muscle cells. The pink part of the figure shows the lack of oxygen in muscle. Meanwhile, in the blue area shows the oxygen depth is repeat. At the beginning of the exercise, the rate of oxygen used exceeds the oxygen supplied by the blood circulatory system. At this area, the muscle is in an oxygen deficiency and said to undergo oxygen depth. But once at the end of the exercise, the intake of the oxygen will oxidize the lactic acid into the carbon dioxide, water and energy. At the end of the recovery phase, when all the lactic acid has been expelled, the oxygen depth is repeat. So everything back to normal. Now we are discussing about the similarities between aerobic respirations and fermentation. So there are several similarities. The first one is the process. Both processes involve the breakdowns of glucose and convert into a chemical energy. Both processes begins in the cytoplasm, occurs in yeast, bacteria, animals and plants. Both processes also produce chemical energy in form of ATP, and the process begins with glycolysis. Next is the differences between aerobic respirations and fermentations. There are about 5 differences between these types of respiration. So aerobic respiration is the process breakdowns of glucose is complete in the presence of oxygen. Meanwhile, the breakdown process of glucose in fermentation is incomplete without oxygen or limited oxygen condition. Aerobic respiration occurs in cytoplasm and mitochondria, meanwhile the fermentation only occurs in the cytoplasm. Aerobic respiration produces water, meanwhile the fermentation does not produce water. Glucose is oxidized completely into carbon dioxide and water in aerobic respiration, but in fermentation, glucose is not oxidized completely into ethanol and carbon dioxide or lactic acid. Last but not least, the amounts of energy generates 1 molecule of glucose in aerobic respiration generates about 2,890 kilojoules of energy. Meanwhile, in fermentation, 1 molecule of glucose only generates 210 kilojoules in alcoholic fermentation and 150 kilojoules in the lactic acid fermentations. Now we reach at the end of the topic 7, cellular respirations. I hope this will help you to understand better. So I hope to see you in the next video. Take care and thank you for watching.